Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Alaska Center for Spiritual Living. Thank you to all of you who have braved the single-digit temperatures and come out this morning. But what a beautiful day. I mean, no clouds. It's got that crisp in the air. Thank you for coming out, and thank you for those on YouTube that are watching us from the comfort of their plus temperatures in their, what does Shirley May call it, the bedside Baptist? So thank you to also the folks watching on YouTube today. The theme for the month of November is freedom from fear and error thinking. And when I read that, I thought, And I realized, I think that I've been doing the Thanksgiving and the November talks for 14 years now. Reverend Marquita always used to like to take that time off right around Thanksgiving. And then when Reverend Linda and I were doing it, she was always back in Montana. And I think that for the last 14 years, we have had the same theme for November, and that's gratitude. So as uncomfortable as freedom from fear and error thinking may be for me, we'll step in and give it a try. And then the topic for today was the fruit of good and evil. And I read that and thought, well, that sounds like rather biblical. I had visions of Adam and Eve. And then I started reading it, and that's what it was. It was all about Adam and Eve. And Adam represented the pure spiritual man, and the snake was something else. And that wasn't me at all. And I just... But I like this idea of good and evil. And so I thought, well, let's just step out of the kiddie pool and jump into the deep end.
Good.
Let's just get in today and get into a topic that comes up many, many times in foundations classes, and that is this. We teach that we are individualized expressions of the Most High, that we are children of God. So if we are children of God, and this God, this infinite intelligence, this presence in the world is a loving presence, and it is for us and not against us. Why do we have suffering? Why do we have misery? Why is there evil in the world? So that's what we're going to attack today.
Whoa.
Once when he was asked about religious science, what exactly is religious science? Ernest Holmes said something to this. This isn't an exact quote, it's a paraphrase. But Ernest Holmes said that religious science is a correlation of the laws of science and the opinions of philosophy and the revelations of religion as applied to our individual lives. It's how we take those things and synthesize them together to come up for a better way of living and a better way of being in this world. And so my 3 points today. First, what is our relationship to the ineffable? Then I'm going to talk a little bit about free will. And thirdly, why does pain and suffering exist? Starting off, what is our relationship to the ineffable? Now, everybody remembers, what is the ineffable?
Something not describable by words.
We did this, we've done this a couple times now. The ineffable is that which we can't put words to. It is so infinite, it's so large, it is so magnificent that our human words don't do it justice. So we made up a big word to put in that place. So what is our relationship to God, Spirit, the thing itself, whatever term we use for our higher power? The first and probably the most common one, since theology came around to an idea of a single God, came to one presence. We've come up with this sort of idea or concept of God as a heavenly Father. And I think that works. It's okay. It doesn't answer all the questions all the time, but the idea of the divine as something greater that sort of watches out for us and takes care of us, like a Heavenly Father. I think that kind of works. But I think there's a better explanation, and Ernest Holmes gets into it, and he wrote a little paper, and it was called The Freedom from Stress, and he wrote, when God produced an instrument, man, through which God could consciously act, this advent of choice and will enabled man to accomplish that which nature had not done specifically. Our power, our energy, our imagination is God individualized as us. So that the idea that we are how that ineffable thing, whatever it is, can experience life. And it is through each and every one of us. Holmes goes on to say, and this was in Living Without Fear, another small paper that he wrote, man is an individualized center of God-conscious life, a point in the infinite sea of life, an intelligent, self-knowing point. Man is the outcome of God's desire to express himself, I'm using the terms of the age, of the time that this was written, to express itself as individuality. The whole meaning of experience is to promote this individuality and to thus provide a fuller channel for the expression of the Supreme Spirit of the universe. Once again, giving us the opportunity to experience that and giving God the chance to experience life through us. My point number 2. Free will. I want to talk a little bit about free will, and once again I'm going to go to Ernest Holmes. I've got a lot of Holmes quotes today. The question then naturally arises, why did God create man and make him a free agent? If God had created us in such a way as to compel us to do or to be anything that was not of our choosing, we should not have been individuals at all. We should have been automatons. We are not some puppet dangling from the strings of some giant marionette in the sky that is dangling us around and telling us exactly what to do. Part of this whole thing is that we do have free will. And the important part of this idea of free will is that we have the freedom to fail. We have the freedom to do things wrong. We are free to screw up.
Yay! Yeah!
And sometimes we're pretty good at that. But it wouldn't mean anything if we had a cosmic safety net that kept everything away from us, that kept all evil, kept all lack and limitation, all cancer, all everything that could ever bad happen to us. We had some great thing in the sky that was saving us at every corner. But we do have free will, and it is in that free will that gives meaning to our lives. We are free to fail. Continuing on, Ernest Holmes says, the right and power to make our own decisions, bad or good, puts you in a very vital position. You now realize that you are no longer an automaton, moved about by the caprice of circumstance, solely guided by instinct or subject to some will superimposed upon you. You are free to choose, but you have to take the consequences of that choosing. You shall have and do have whatever you recognize and accept as yours. We're free to mess up. So my third point, why does pain and suffering and evil exist? I looked for a definition of evil that I thought would fit, and it's kind of long, but it really makes sense. This comes from the New Thought Dictionary. Evil, a term used to imply the opposite of good. Evil is not a thing in itself, but is an absence of what is felt to be good or pleasing, as darkness is an absence of light. A death is an absence of life. The term is usually linked with the idea of negation or destruction, though these forces in themselves are not really bad. What appears to be destruction at times is only a vehicle for change. The term is entirely relative. What might seem evil to one man might be seen as good by another. And we can extend that to cultures. That which one culture regards as evil or as bad, another culture might think is perfectly fine. Then the example that I've used before is cannibalism. I mean, that's pretty unacceptable in our culture today. We don't eat one another. But there have been cultures throughout history where that was common, that they did eat one another. It's culture dependent in many cases. We go back to Ernest Holmes. There is a question, however, which naturally arises. Why all the suffering, sorrow, and pain? Why has tragedy accompanied the journey of man? Again, our imagination may answer this question in a somewhat plausible manner. There is no other way through which individuality can evolve. Man must be left alone to discover himself, else he be compelled arbitrarily to follow one reed, in which case he would be an automaton and not an individual. We have to have the right to fail. Why does pain and suffering and evil exist? Because our thoughts make it so. That doesn't mean that we wake up in the morning and say, oh, I think I'm going to be poor today. Or wake up and say, I think I'm going to get cancer. That'd be a good idea today. We don't make those types of conscious decisions. But we sometimes make decisions which results in things that are less than pleasurable. Sometimes we wake up and say, I think I'll have a drink today. And we don't stop with one drink. We drink a quart of whiskey a day. And that can have a really bad effect on our lives. We can wake up and decide, I'm not going to be that kind, loving person that I could be today. Today I'm going to be filled with fear. I'm going to be afraid of people whose skin is a different color. I'm going to be afraid of things that are different than the way I am. I'm going to be afraid of people that don't dress the way I do or eat the things that I eat. And we're free to make those choices, and we get to suffer the consequences of those because we deny ourselves friendship, we deny ourselves the love, the support of those people who look different than we do, dress differently than we do, and who think differently than we do. Our thoughts make it so. We are the ones who define good and bad and evil through our own judgments. These judgments are formed by our values and the culture in which we live. And there are things that go along with that. One is this idea of judgment. What we judge to be good is oftentimes based on insufficient information. I've told the parable of the blind men and the elephant before, but it really fits here. And this was a story of some men that lived in India, and they were all a household of blind men, and they heard one day that there was an elephant that was going to come to their village. They didn't know what an elephant was. And I thought, well, let's get together and we're going to figure out what elephant is. So the elephant came to the town, and they all went up to experience elephant. And one man reached up, and he got the tusk. And, oh, wow, it's long, and it's smooth, and it's hard, and it's pointy and sharp. Oh, that's quite a thing, this elephant. Another guy, he got up by the ear, and its ears flopping. And, whoa, it's like a giant fan. It's blowing out. Wow, that's quite a thing. Another man, he went to a leg, and it's like a giant tree stump, but it can pick up and move. Another guy, he had the side, and it's like a giant leather wall. And the last blind man, he was in the back, he had the tail, and well, there's different versions of this parable. He said it's like a rope. So they all met back at the house, and they saw, started, talking about what is this essence of elephantness. And each one had a totally different view of what elephantness is. And sometimes we're like that. We don't have the whole picture. And we don't work together long enough to get to see that we have different views, different ways of looking at things. And maybe all of those together can provide us with a more comprehensive view of elephantness. In 1893, Gandhi was in South Africa, and he boarded a train. Now, I don't know if it was through insufficient information, whether it was through a conscious decision, but Gandhi sat in the whites section on this train. Coming from India, there was no segregation of facilities based on the color of someone's skin. He very easily could have innocently sat in the wrong place, but the net result is that he was thrown off the train and cursed and forbidden to ride on the train. Over the next 4 years, living in South Africa, Gandhi came to the awareness that we could change the world without violence, that we could make an impact on one another as human beings without having war, without having to fight, without throwing rocks, without guns. We could do it in a nonviolent way. And he began to believe that. And then in 1897, he was leading a very nonviolent demonstration about the unequal treatment of people based on the color of their skin. When he was attacked, he was beaten. And I think it was in that treatment, in the way that was, that Gandhi came to the self-realization that he was onto something really big here, that he could change the world. It was his own self-awakening and realization. And in that, we've seen something that changed the entire world. So something that is definitely wrong. Our judgment of other human beings based on the color of their skin, we accept today as wrong, as fallacy of incorrect thinking, error thinking. But at that time, there were a bunch of people that thought that way and felt that way and allowed it. And Gandhi was able to step into that and make a change because of his own awareness. So he had that suffering. He had that pain. He had the discrimination and was able to move past it. It was out of the pain that we had an awakening, that we had an advancement of humankind. So maybe there is more to the picture. Maybe the work of Gandhi, who died, I believe, in 1948, is still alive today. I had this way I heard of this story. Here it is all these years later, 50, 70 some odd, I should know this number. That's when I was born. 71 years ago, that the death of Gandhi still has an impact on us today. And the people in our center that are working with the season of peace are looking at some new things and different things that we're going to be looking at for the season of peace. And one of the things we're looking at was a movie, and I was watching the trailer of that, and this came out of that trailer. So those effects are still here today. Are we there all the way? Of course not. But we've made so many huge strides in such a short amount of time. Gandhi saw the mistreatment of people of color as his path to self-discovery. From this conscious choice, the nonviolent movement was elevated to the world stage. Conclusion today. One final quote. This is from The Practical Application of the Science of Mind, going along with the paraphrase quote that I had earlier. It's the application of these laws of science, these opinions of philosophy, these revelations of religion. And these things that I'm saying today are my opinions. This is a talk today on philosophy. These are my opinions, and you're free to choose and think whatever you want. I love that about our philosophy. We don't teach anybody what to think, but maybe we'll give you something to think about today anyway. Takeaway. The power of choice with which man has been endowed is either his greatest blessing or his greatest curse. Properly understood, it can lift him to the heights. Misunderstood, it can drag him to the depths. He is free to choose anything he wishes, but he must accept the responsibility for his choices, because inexorable law will create his experiences according to his choices. And so it is with our awareness of those choices, our awareness of that inherent divinity that is within each and every one of us, that I invite my colleagues, the practitioners, to join me in holding our congregation in love and light, and holding our congregation in love. We just simply recognize that as we go through this thing called life, as an expression of the Most High, we are absolutely free to fly, to soar, and we are free to fail. And so it is with that in mind that we address those who are experiencing lack and limitation, who are experiencing poor health, who are experiencing separation from God and separation from one another. We simply know that this is not our true nature. Our nature is one of love, because as individualized expressions of the Most High, we can only be what God is, and God is love. And so we know that within us, inherent, is something greater than that lack and limitation. There is abundance and prosperity, and it is that abundance and prosperity that we recognize and embrace for every brother and sister who is experiencing the effect of not enoughness. And it's the same with health. We just know that at our true nature, we are divine beings. This earthly suit may wear out, but as divine beings, we continue to grow and expand on this and on any other plane. And it's all because we are most of all beings of love. So all of the interactions that we have on this plane at this time, whether they be romantic relationships, work relationships, family relationships, we are above anything else. We are more than that because we are beings of love. And so we just let God's love, our love, extend to everyone and everything. We see the God in each other. And so we just give thanks. We give thanks for our awareness of the presence of God in ourselves and in everyone. So now we can just sit back with confidence and let our lives unfold in perfect divine right order. And so it is.
So it is.